Hey Grayson Towns, this is Granddad. I hope you're having a good day. I thought I'd read some books while you watch me shovel some snow. It's a flippy, which is a good thing. I thought I'd read a book while you were watching the video. This book is called The Fiddler, From the Land of Barely There. Once upon a time, and farther than far at any very edge of the horizon was a path bordered with lacy fern. If you walked down that path, following the dancing squirrels and singing birds, you would find a land called Barely There. Barely There, a land filled with magic, a land where the wind whispers through the giant pines, then suddenly whips a crinkled orange leaf high into the sky to float in lazy circles back to the forest floor, and the land called Barely There. Probably not. Down the fern-bordered path was a quiet, shadowy glade. In the glade beside the path were short, squatty cabins made of pitch, pine, and poplar. In the cabins with the shutters drawn lived bears of Barely There. It didn't look as if bears lived there. It didn't look as if any bears were home. But if you looked very carefully, you could see wisps of smoke sneakily slip from the chimneys of the river Stone Rock. Look again! Here and there behind the shutters, bar the doors, locked tight, lived and hid the bears of Barely There. For you see, the bears didn't trust anybody, not even themselves. All the cabins would have stayed quietly boarded up and secreted away. All the bears would have stayed hidden from each other, but for the day there came music to the land of Barely There in the shape of a whistling bear. This bear didn't speak from pine to pine like other bears. This bear danced down the middle of the path of lacy ferns as he whistled a tune. Beneath his arm he carried a mysterious odd-shaped package that seemed like nothing more than a wrap of bumps and lumps. He nearly walked by the little cabins in the woods, but then he stopped. He looked at the cabins, smiled again, a great big smile, and stepped off the path. He walked right up to the first cabin and knocked musically on the door, not once, not twice, but thrice. Rap, rap, rap. There came from the cabin the flopping noise of furry flippers on wooden floors. With a creak, the door opened a crack, and two large eyes peeked out at his whistling bear. The eyes looked and then looked, and again as the door opened a bit wider. "Ah, what do you want?" asked a fuzzy voice. The whistling bear didn't talk like you and me. He sang whatever he said. "My name is Fiddler, and you see I come from the land of Flippery. I walked where is a rhythm in a beat. May I come in and rest my feet?" Then with a smile and a short bow he walked right into the cabin without much as "excuse me" or "by your leave." Fiddler plopped himself down in a big old chair right beside the table of plain pine planks, placed his oddly wrapped package on the table for him, and drummed his fingers in time. "Oh, my name is Azalea Bear," she said as her paw went nervously from her cheek to her apron. "I don't rightly remember what the E stands for." Fiddler laughed and sang, "I like your name, but I don't care. Have you some food you'd like to share?" Azalea looked at him suspiciously and said, "Mr. Fiddler Bear, I am known far and wide for my barley bran biscuits, but I am not giving them away for free." Fiddler smiled a secret smile and then sang his simple song. "Your biscuits are great, this I've been told, and for them I'll trade more value than gold." "More value than gold, she said. "You'll have your biscuits, Mr. Fiddler Bear." She ground up some barley and bran of coarse flour. She whisked and whipped the flour into a batter that was better than any other. As the biscuits bubbled and baked, she danced about the cabin, her skirts skittering on the floor, while Fiddler hummed an old bear tune. When the biscuits were baked, Fiddler ate them all, even the crumbs. He then leaned back in his chair and sang, "Those biscuits were fine, they tasted just great, but something is missing in what I just ate." Azalea paced about muttering and mumbled, I know. Bumbleberries are what's missing. That miserly old Francis T. Bear from right next door won't give me any bumbleberries to make my biscuits better. I just don't trust that old geezer. If I ask a bumbleberry, he'd want biscuits. Well, sang Fiddler with a smile. "I'll slip next door and talk to Francis for a while." I guess he was supposed to sing that. With Azalea peeking through her shutters, Fiddler danced next door carrying his odd-shaped package. Like no one before, he pounded on the door of Francis T. Bear's house. After much creaking and cranking, the door finally opened, and there stood a very confused, bear dressed only in a red long underwear. "May I help you?" he asked. "My name is Fiddler, and you see I came from the land of Flippery. Hungry I'm very. May I have some of your bumbleberries?" Old Francis T. was a bit flustered, but answered, "Yes, but I just don't give them away." Fiddler smiled a secret smile, then sang a simple song. "Your berries are great, I've been told, and for them I'll trade you value more than gold." More value than gold, he said. "You'll have your berries, Mr. Fiddler Bear." With that, the two of them went inside and closed the door. Fiddler put his package on the table, sat down in the rocking chair made of oiled hickory oak, and he rocked back and forth with a rhythm and a beat. Francis T. was nervous as could be, for no one had ever been to his cabin before. He blustered about and found a bowl of polished pine, and he filled it to the brim with bumbleberries, all plump and purple, and plopped it down in front of Fiddler without even a spoon or napkin. Fiddler tasted one, and then tasted two, and he smiled and sang, "Those berries were fine, they tasted just great, but something's just missing in what I just ate." I know. "What's missing?" said a frantic Francis T. Bear. "Honey from the butter bees, but that old Emily Z, who lives right next door, won't give me any. I don't trust that crotchety bear. She probably would want some of my bumbleberries in return." Well, sang Fiddler with a smile. "I'll slip next door and talk to Emily a while." Fiddler, with his odd-shaped package under his arm, skipped down the path and up on the cabin porch of Emily Z. Bear. He knocked and knocked, rap, tap, tap. There was a long pause. Finally, Emily Z. cracked open the door. May I help you, young bear? You surely may, ma'am, sang Fiddler with a smile. My name is Fiddler, and I see you come from the land of Flippery. Hungry I am, and I don't have any money. May I please have a taste of your honey? No money, huh? She said with a growl. Then why should I give you a taste of my honey? Fiddler smiled a secret smile, then sang this simple song. Your honey is great, this I've been told. For a taste I'll trade more value than gold. More value than gold, you say? Well, come inside, Mr. Fiddler Bear. You shall have a taste. With that, the two of them went inside. Emily Z rustled about and found an old wooden spoon. She slowly dipped it into the wooden casket that sat on a stool. Her wrist twisted and twirled as she drew up the honey, golden as sun and thicker than taffy. Patting her hair behind her ear, she passed the spoon to Fiddler, who took a long, slurping taste. He smiled a secret smile and then sang, that honey was fine. It tasted just great, but something is missing in what I just ate. I know, mumbled Emily Z as she paced back and forth with her hands clapped behind her. Biscuits and berries would taste great with my honey, but those neighbors of mine won't give me any. I just don't trust those misery bears. They just want honey in return, and I'll be jiggered if I'll give them to them. Hummed the Fiddler as he drummed his claws clickety-click on the tabletop. Then, without saying a simple "How do you do?" he grabbed his odd-shaped package and walked out the door. With 3 sets of eyes watching from the wooden cabins, Fiddler picked up branches and sticks from the forest floor. He stacked the wood neatly to the side of the path of lacy fern. Then, with a click of flint, he lit a fire and it began to glow. For the first time in a long time, that forest glade warmed as the smoke curled gently through the boughs and branches of the trees. When the fire was crackling and snapping nicely, he sat with a thump on an overturned stump and began to unwrap the odd-shaped package that he had carried wherever he went. Fold by fold, the Fiddler unwrapped the package until the golden light of the roaring fire revealed a fiery polished fiddle of bonewood with strings like a silver strand of a spiderweb drenched in the morning dew. Carefully he took from the package a long, narrow bow. He placed the fiddle under his chin and began passing the bow softly across the strings. The music seeped like fog throughout the forest of this land called Barely There. The melody soft and sweet, quiet even. The noisy birds as they perched in the trees. They quieted even the birds. Music, mysterious, melodious music, soothed and warmed the glade of lacy fern and pine. One by one, the doors of the cabins opened wider and wider until each of the bears, from E. Azalea to Emily Z, stood unabashedly listening to the haunting music played by the fiddler. The music was so beautiful that it seemed to be on loan, never meant to be owned. The bears came haltingly out of their seclusion, each carrying a bit of those secret foods they had hoarded for years. E. Azalea with her barley bran biscuits, Francis T. with his purple bumbleberries, and Emily Z. with her crock of butterbeep honey. As the music danced upon the flames of the fire, the bears offered their gifts to the fiddler, who stopped his fiddle playing and softly sang, "The payment I give, the payment I owe, is, as I said, more valued than gold. It's not the music I give, but the gift of sharing is the way to live. Now share all your biscuits, berries, and honey. You'll find sharing love is better than money. With that he turned his fiddle, rosined up his bow, and with a tap of his foot he let it all go. And the bears danced and danced and danced. The end. Okay, here's another one. This is a book called Norman Fools the Tooth Fairy. Norman apparently is a crocodile, and he has friends that are otters, apparently, from the pictures. But this isn't the thing about pictures. Okay, Norman was the only kid in his class who hadn't lost a baby tooth. One was sort of loose now. Instead of finishing his worksheet, Norman wiggled the tooth with his finger. Later, while his teacher, Miss Harp, read them a story, Norman waggled the tooth with his tongue. How else was he going to get a tooth to put under his pillow for the tooth fairy? His friends gave him lots of advice. I tied a string around my tooth, said Toby. Then I tied the other end to a doorknob, and my sister slammed the door. Norman winced. My dad pulled mine out, said Matt with his pliers. Norman shuddered, but he admired the empty space between their teeth when they smiled. It showed that the tooth fairy had already paid them a visit. Try biting into an apple, said Sarah, or eat lots of caramels. Norman didn't have any caramels, but he did have a piece of licorice in his lunch bag. Norman tried chewing on the licorice for a while, but nothing happened. Then he stuck it over his tooth. Look at me now, he said. Hey, said Toby. Norman lost his front tooth. Then Norman ate the licorice off, and everyone laughed. That night, Norman stuck some licorice on his tooth again and smiled at himself in the mirror. He looked wonderful, as though a tooth were really missing. It gave him an idea. He fooled his friends. Why not fool the tooth fairy? Maybe she would think his tooth has really fell out. But the tooth fairy would want to see it. Norman searched the bathroom for something like a tooth. At last he broke off a tooth-sized chip of soap. Perfect, he said, and wrapped it in a toilet paper. Then Norman went to bed. He stuck the fake tooth under his pillow and turned out the light. Norman tossed and turned, waiting for the tooth fairy to come. What would she be like, he wondered. Maybe she would be a pretty lady in a sparkling gown, looking for a lost teeth. Hey, tooth fairy, he would call to her. Here's one. Norman felt for the soap chip under his pillow. It was very small, and it was hard to find. The tooth fairy might not see it. He wrapped lots of toilet paper around the fake tooth and marked it Norman's tooth. It made a big lump under his pillow. Now she couldn't miss it. Norman lay in bed waiting. Soon the tooth fairy would float into his room with a bag of money. After a while, he began to worry. How does she know when someone's tooth falls out? Does the tooth fairy just go from house to house looking under pillows? Norman got out of bed and made a sign with his crayons. Tooth under here, it said. An arrow pointed to his pillow just to be sure. It must be very late, Norman thought. Maybe she wasn't going to come once he even dozed off a little bit. But he woke with a start and checked the tooth under the pillow. He hoped that somehow a quarter had taken its place, but no, a lump of toilet paper and soap was still there. What did the tooth fairy do with all those teeth? Norman wondered. She must want them for something special. Maybe she made them into keychains. Norman saw a light come through the window. It was growing larger. He peeked between his closed eyelids, hoping to get a glimpse of the pretty lady. What he saw did not look like a tooth fairy to Norman. It looked more like a monster with a baby teeth hanging from her necklace. It was a tooth monster coming towards his bed. Teeth, the tooth monster yelled. I want teeth. Little helpers were following behind her. Teeth, they chanted, waving pliers. Give me teeth. There's a kid with a whole mouthful of them, screeched. One of them screeched. Let's get them. Maybe she's having a bad dream. Wait, Norman was so excited that he swallowed the licorice. There aren't any teeth here, honest, he said. I was only fooling. Look, Norman turned the light on in a hurry. He reached under his pillow, but the monsters had vanished. It was really just the wind blowing his drapes on his window. Even so, he got up and threw the fake tooth out the window, and just to feel safe, he slept the rest of the night with the light on. The next morning, Norman was tired when he went to school. For the first time in weeks, he didn't check his tooth. At lunch, when he was eating his peanut butter and jelly sandwich, Norman bit down on something hard. It was his tooth. It had fallen out all by itself, just like that, just the way he had always dreamed that it would happen. How will the tooth fairy hear that my tooth came out? He asked his mother at bedtime. Don't worry, she said. The tooth fairy knows all about it. But Norman looked worried. Suppose she isn't nice? His mother patted him. I'm sure she's someone you'd like. Even so, Norman slept with the light on again. He squeezed his eyes shut and never opened them until morning. When Norman felt under his pillow, sure enough, his tooth was gone, and in its place was a shiny new quarter. The end. Okay, one more. This is a Dr. Seuss book. It's called And to Think That I Saw It on Mulberry Street. When I leave home to walk to school, my dad always says to me, Marco, keep your eyelids up and see what you can see. But when I tell him where I've been and what I think I've seen, he looks at me and sternly says, your eyesight's much too keen. Stop telling such outlandish tales. Stop turning minnows into whales. Now, what can I say when I get home today? All along the way to school and all the way back, I've looked and looked. I've kept careful track. But all that I've noticed, except my own feet, was a house, horse, and a wagon. The pages are skewed. That's nothing to tell of. That won't do, of course. Just a broken down wagon that's drawn by a horse. That can't be my story. That's only a start. I'll say that a zebra was pulling the cart. And that is a story that no one can beat. When I say that I saw it on Mulberry Street. Yes, the zebra is fine, but I think it's a shame. Such a marvelous beast with a cart that's so tame. The story would really be better to hear if the driver I saw were a charioteer. A gold and blue chariot, something to meet, rumbling like thunder down Mulberry Street. No, it won't do at all. A zebra too small. A reindeer is better. He's fast and he's fleet. And he'd look mighty smart on old Mulberry Street. Hold on a minute. There's something wrong. A reindeer hates the way it feels to pull a thing that runs on wheels. He'd be much happier instead if he pulled a fancy sled. A reindeer in a sleigh. Say, anyone could think of that. Jack or Fred or Joe or Nate. Say, even Jane could think of that. But it isn't too late to make one little change. A sleigh and an elephant. There's something strange. I'll pick one with plenty of power and size. A blue one with plenty of fun in its eyes. And then, just to give him a little more tone, have a Rajah with rubies perched high on a throne. Say, that makes a story that no one can beat. And I say that I saw it on Mulberry Street. But now I don't know. It still doesn't seem right. An elephant pulling a thing that's so light would whip it around in the air like a kite. But he'd look simply grand with a big brass band. A band that's so good should have someone to hear it, but it's going so fast that it's hard to keep near it. I'll put on a trailer. I know they won't mind if a man sits and listens while hitched on behind. But now, is it fair? Is it fair what I've done? I'll bet those wagons weigh more than a ton. That's really too heavy a load for one beast. I'll give him some helpers. He needs two at least. But now what worries me is this. Mulberry Street runs into Bliss. Bliss the street. Unless there's something I can fix up, there'll be an awful traffic mix-up. It takes police to do the trick, to guide them through where traffic is thick. It takes police to do the trick. They'll never crash now. They'll race at top speed with Sergeant Mulvaney himself in the lead. The mayor is there and he thinks it's grand, and he raises his hat as they dash by the stand. The mayor is there and the aldermen too, all waving banners of red, white, and blue. And that is a story that no one can beat when I say that I saw it on Mulberry Street. With a roar of its motor, an airplane appears and dumps out confetti while everyone cheers. And that makes a story that's really not bad, but it still could be better. I suppose that I add a Chinese boy who eats with sticks, a big Mexican doing trick, or a big magician doing tricks, a 10-foot beard that needs a comb. No time for more, I'm almost home. I swung around the corner and dashed through the gate. I ran up the steps and I felt simply great. For I had a story that no one could beat, and to think that I saw it on Mulberry Street. But Dad said quite calmly, "Just draw up your stool and tell me the sights on the way home from school." There was so much to tell I just couldn't begin. Dad looked at me sharply and pulled at his chin. He frowned at me sternly from there in his seat. Was there nothing to look at, no people to greet? Did nothing excite you or make your heart beat? Nothing, I said, growing red as a beet, but a plain horse and wagon on Mulberry Street. The end.
Ha